Let's get to that topic I mentioned. Of course, spring ball is going around, and me and Craven and Carter soon will be hitting a bunch of these camps and just kind of talking with coaches, seeing practice for the first time. And that kind of got me thinking, because Craven was drinking the UTSA juice, I was drinking the Texas State juice as far as like players and interesting names, and it got me thinking like, okay, there's some names here that like people don't really know about yet that a lot of the coaches are high on. So I wanted to start with that for today. Who are your breakout candidates? We each picked 2 players, right? Me, Carter, and Mallory. I'm going to start off. This one's my quote-unquote obvious one, but it's still not an obvious one. I'm going to go with Alex Kilgore at SMU. He's a linebacker. I believe at Katy Pato, when he was a junior and senior, they won state his junior year. He was kind of a defensive end, outside linebacker, edge rusher. He's been more of the middle-ish linebacker for SMU last year. And I saw him in his first game against La Tech. I believe he had a sack, maybe 2 sacks, I can't remember. He's an athletic freak. He played alongside Damian Sanford, who's now at A&M, and of course DJ Hicks, who's already at A&M. That defense was insane. Yeah, it was insane. And talking to a lot of other recruiting guys around him, they liked, obviously Hicks was the number 1 recruit, but they liked him a lot more than Sanford in terms of upside. And I think I see it, right? The fact they're moving him middle, or he's playing more middle, I'm very interested in. I think that shows a little bit of range in coverage and all that. But I think this SMU defense with him, he's probably going to not start right away. He might be more of a rotational piece. I think he could be very, very pivotal for a pretty good defense. That showed its kind of prowess last year.
And if it's not this upcoming year in 2024, it's 2025 for him, because he's going to be behind Kobe Wilson and Ahmad Walker, second-team All-ACC guy and the leading tackler in solo tackles for Ahmad Walker there. But you described him, right? Athletic freak. This could be a guy you see break out in 2025. But I think the SMU defense is just very polarizing too, because they were so dominant in Group of 5 conference play, but then we see them in the Wasabi Fenway Bowl on Wednesday at 9 a.m. and they give up 262 rushing yards to Boston College. So the whole defense, I've got my eye on.
And now they're going to play a whole schedule of teams like Boston College and better, right? Going to the ACC. So Kilgore, I should mention, 27 solo tackles last year, 4 sacks, 1 pick. In his debut freshman year, right? I believe he came in after he graduated in the winter of that year, and then enrolled in spring, and then was kind of available with them. So again, these are candidates who I'm kind of pegging as watch this guy, breakout potential. So Carter, let's go to yours.
Okay, so I got 2. I don't know which one I want to pick first. All right, I'm gonna keep it in not now a Group of 5 for UTSA.
Okay.
Denver Harris.
Nice.
Is my breakout candidate.
Love that one.
We talk about spring ball is Kool-Aid season.
Yes.
Where you go to these camps and you see who the coaches are high on, and Craven walked into the office 2 days ago and said, Denver Harris is in for a breakout year. The coaches love how he's mentally matured. This was a Joe Price vouch. For Denver Harris, his former coach at North Shore. Joe Price now working at UTSA. Denver Harris will lock down one side of the field. He will be a guy that follows the number 1 wide receiver in the AAC and follows him to get a snow cone at the concession stand right after.
Yes.
He's the most talented guy that will come through UTSA's program. The question is mental maturity.
Sure.
And I think for Denver Harris, if he can't figure it out with Jeff Traylor and his team, then it just won't happen for him. This is the 3rd chance for him. 3 strikes, you don't get a 4th strike in baseball. So I'm looking for a huge year from Denver Harris.
Yeah, I think that, of course, former 5-star recruit, right, at A&M, dismissed for, it was along with him and Chris Marshall and a couple other guys.
A lot of guys.
Yeah.
Like half and then, of course, 22 recruiting class.
Right. And then, then there was that infamous video of him driving through the parking lot, the parking garage, speeding. And so it was like, there was, again, a lot of off-field issues with him. But the fact that Joe Price vouched for him, and I think the fact that he ended up at UTSA, right? That's an interesting spot where Jeff Traylor has run of that program. It's a stable situation, right? Not necessarily at A&M where you didn't know if Jimbo was getting fired and blah, blah, blah. He's at a program now surrounded by culture, surrounded by, and he's on his, like you mentioned, he's on his last chance. So he knows that he has to ball out basically. And I think that's a very interesting one because one, it's not a guarantee, right? We've seen him bounce around A&M, LSU, and now at UTSA, but we see the obvious upside. There's a reason why this guy was on the cover of our Rising magazine, right? When he was graduating from North Shore. So if he pays off, I mean, look out, right? He's going to be the best corner in the AAC if he ends up panning out.
But Jeff Traylor is that type of coach where he still operates as a high school coach from Gilbert, Texas.
Exactly.
So he is very involved in these players' lives.
I was about to say, you don't always, when you're in the high school level, you don't always get to dictate who comes through your program. So you have to learn to mesh with certain personalities, right? And so I guess that does play into a part of how, in my opinion, that will benefit Denver Harris and hopefully UTSA as well. All right, Mallory, who's your first player?
I know. I'm going to go with Baylor wide receiver, Ashtyn Hawkins.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you can necessarily call this a breakout player because he had a fantastic year last year. Caught 55 passes for 874 yards, 3 touchdowns at Texas State last season under G.J. Kinney. But what I love about this is that he's being reunited with Jake Spavital. And I think he fits absolutely perfectly in this offense. Now, if you remember, Baylor recently brought in Toledo's quarterback, DeQuan Finn.
Yes.
And he threw for 2,600 yards and 22 touchdowns last season. Really, really strong at the quarterback spot. And with this new spread up-tempo like offense that Jake Spavital's implementing into this Baylor team, I think that Ashtyn Hawkins is poised to have a breakout year. An even better year, I guess I should say, than last year.
Yeah, I like that a lot because even if he has the type of year he had last year, that still, in my opinion, qualifies as a breakout because
100%.
Doing that at Baylor, doing that in the Big 12, Baylor is in need of somebody to really take a next step in that wide receiver room. It feels like we're in year 10 of waiting for Keyshawn Jackson or Monterey Baldwin.
Monterey Baldwin's been next up for a decade.
And so it feels like we're constantly trying to figure out. And so what Ashtyn Hawkins does, right? I don't know if he's going to be instantly the best player in that room. He's going to be among the best players. But what that does is that takes pressure off of a Baldwin, right?
Yes.
That takes just enough pressure off of a Jackson. And to where he's able to operate. I mean, he broke out under Jake Spavital, right? Jake Spavital's final year. We actually saw him in that Baylor game that kind of had his breakout performance. And that offense wasn't that good that year. It was just really him. He entered the transfer portal initially, and then of course he ended up coming back. But like you mentioned, he's now reunited with the coach that kind of realized his potential. Not the biggest guy, right? But he is able to just create separation in a little bit of a poor man's Xavier Worthy type of way, right? He's not the most physical guy. He of course doesn't have the top end speed of a Worthy, but like that style, that similar of separation that he can have.
I'm going to compare Baylor's wide receiver core to SMU's from last year, where they don't have a number one wide receiver, so everyone's going to have to eat and no one's going to get too full.
Right.
They need to do a better job of spreading the ball around and just frankly stay healthy because we joke about Monterey Baldwin not breaking out yet, but he's just constantly injured.
Yep.
Right. So and Keyshawn Jackson Jr., I think he has the most number one capabilities out of that wide receiver core, but again, just injuries around there. So Craven's talked about it before. All those wide receivers jumped for joy when Jake Spavital came back to Baylor, none more so than Ashtyn Hawkins.
Yep. Hal Presley, of course, in that wide receiver room, and then Josh Cameron, who was somebody who was hurt last year a little bit as well, who was expected to be part of that room. So again, there's a lot of potential. They just got to stay healthy.
Wide receiver wearing number 34, Josh Cameron.
Yes.
So need to change that number if he's going to break out. I'm sorry, I can't get over it.
Fair enough. I guess I can agree with that. All right. So on my second one, staying with the Texas State theme, this one is my off-the-radar one completely. It's Chris Don, formerly of Mesquite Horn. He was a late pickup for G.J. Kinney and that staff. This wide receiver room, we mentioned it, loses Ashtyn Hawkins. Of course, they bring back Joey Hobart, who's one of the best wide receivers in the state, probably the best FCS to FBS transfer in my opinion, and one of the best in the country, definitely the best in the state. And of course, they have guys like Drew Donnelly coming back. They have, I'm forgetting a big name somewhere in there, but they have talent coming back.
Cole Wilson,
thank you. But that leaves, with Ashtyn Hawkins leaving, he doesn't play the same position as Ashtyn Hawkins. He'll be more spelling for Joey Hobart. But with Ashtyn Hawkins leaving, that just creates kind of a shuffling, right? Somebody has to come into that next role, and so therefore other spots need to be filled. Every person I talked to, whether it was Joey Hobart, G.J. Kinney, Mac Leftwich at Texas State camp when I was there, mentioned Chris Don's name. And they mentioned him as somebody who they wanted to get on the field in some way, and he had like 27-ish yards, something like that last year. But they've mentioned him as somebody who's taken a big leap. G.J. Kinney's from Mesquite Horn. He jokes that was his initial first commit, was Mesquite Horn coming out of high school, or going into high school. But so that's a hometown connection for him that he really feels passionate about. And I think Chris Dunn is somebody's name who, again, I don't think he's going to hit that 800-yard mark, but I could see him as somebody who the next season, 2020, after 2024, we're going to be like 2025. That guy's going to be awesome.
Does it seem like he's right behind Joey Hobart right now in slot?
Yes, he is going to be in that slot. I think they do have him in that slot role right now. But again, if they move Joey Hobart around a little bit more, right, because of Ashtyn Hawkins not being there, if they move him around to the X a little bit or whatever, or the Z, whatever you want, that then feels, okay, they have the body to put there in the slot in Chris Dunn to be able to make up for that. So, again, I think that wide receiver room, similar to Baylor, interesting, right? Bo Sparks comes in from Utah Tech, same spot that Joey Hobart. Kylan Evans is a freshman. He enrolled, right? Him and Brad Jackson, the quarterback from San Antonio Reagan, I believe. They're the only two enrollees, which doesn't happen at the Group of 5 level a lot. Kylan Evans is a bigger wide receiver that they just don't have. So, again, I'm betting on Chris Dunn, but that's another wide receiver room that's very intriguing to me.
All right, and my turn for the next breakout candidate.
Go for it.
This isn't a breakout candidate. This is where I took the polarizing debate.
Okay.
I'm going Richard Reese at Baylor.
Okay. I like it. He's somebody who broke out, but
he's already broken out. He broke back in.
I was about to say, but Baylor as a team kind of broke him back in.
He was the Big 12 Freshman of the Year 2 years ago. He had 900 yards, which I think was a Baylor rushing record for freshmen. He really emerged, and last year we were talking about he is going to be the bell cow. Yeah. I actually when I was researching this, I searched up Richard Reese's name, and I was scrolling through the internet, and I saw a 2023 preview that said Reese is Baylor's bell cow. And it was written in August 2023, and I said, man, what idiot wrote that? And it was me.
That was because the first thing you wrote,
his carries got cut to a third of what he had.
Yeah.
Dawson Pendergrass, a freshman, I wrote about Baylor's 3-star RBU backfield with Richard Reese, Dawson Pendergrass, and Bryson Washington. Yes. Dawson Pendergrass was getting more carries than Richard Reese was last year. And I think part of it was that Richard Reese was injured in fall camp, and they had a lot of new linemen running that wide zone scheme, and he just wasn't meshing very well. But I don't know. How does Jake Spavital, you think, use the running backs? Could you see him breaking back out?
Yeah, 100%. So he does, his first year, they had about, I think, first or second year, they had 2 500-yard rushers and about a 300. Again, he's not going to be a bell cow like in the wide zone, but somebody like a Lincoln Perry who broke out Jake Spavital's last year, I believe he had 700-ish yards. Their leading rusher, if he runs similar the offense that they ran at Texas State, it's going to be kind of a by committee, 2 to 3 backs. Nobody's going to break, I think, 800 or 900 yards, but like you'll see 400 to 900-ish in their divisions between them.
That'll be perfect for Baylor because Dominic Richardson is still there.
Yeah.
Dawson Pendergrass, I could have easily put him as the breakout candidate.
Oh, sure. I was about to say, there's a reason why what did he have, 3,000 yards something at Mineola or something?
He was Mineola's team.
Yeah, but he was Mineola. He drugged them to I think they made the playoffs barely, or they maybe just barely missed the playoffs, and he was the entire reason for that. So, yeah, I like that. Jake Spavital, again, very underrated run schemer, in my opinion. Of course, everybody knows him for the passing, but he does. Brock Sturgis, Calvin Hill, Lincoln Perry, a lot of Texas State fans can remember good running backs being able to produce under that. All right, Mallory, who is your last one?
Okay, my last breakout player is Matthew Golden.
Matthew Golden.
I got
Houston,
something to say here.
Now okay, say it real quick.
Go ahead, say it.
No, me go ahead?
Yeah.
I just think Matthew Golden coming to Texas, it's huge.
Cheat code.
For Texas.
Cheat code.
But Sam Brown was the best receiver on Houston's team last year.
Fair enough.
That's fair.
I'll say that. Okay, Mallory, go ahead.
Okay, so with the exit of Jordan Whittington and Xavier Worthy and A.D. Mitchell probably entering the NFL draft, they needed somebody who was like Xavier Worthy that's got that top end speed and can break those defenses over the top.
Yeah.
And when Matthew Golden entered the transfer portal, I feel like Sark's eyes just lit up because they were like, that's exactly who we're looking for, because he's going to be entering a wide receiver room that is kind of young. I mean, Jonte Cook's coming back, but it's a young wide receiver room. And they needed to hit the portal and find somebody who's already got that top-end speed that they're looking for, somebody who's got experience, somebody who did really well last season at a Power 4, I guess, school. And I think Matthew Golden is the perfect fit for Sark's offense.
I think he is. You look at this wide receiver room, and I think Craven wrote about it a little bit before. They lose 2 NFL caliber wide receivers, probably at the very least 2 second-round wide receivers.
After the combine, 2 first-round wide.
Yeah, I was about to say, potentially late first.
Seriously.
After the combine. But then they just reload it with, you look at the projected starting, it's Isaiah Bond from Alabama, who was probably I think the best wide receiver pickup in the portal. And then you look at Silas Bolden, who people just forgot about Silas Bolden when they got Isaiah Bond. Silas Bolden was one of Oregon State's top receivers last year. And then they added Matthew Golden, who was probably one of the best freshmen in the state last year.
100%.
And so they just reloaded overnight. By the way, Ryan Wingo, Jonte Cook, those are guys that we haven't mentioned yet. They're going to be in the rotation, right?
Right.
So yes, it's not a lot of unknowns, right? Silas Bolden and Bond have production. Golden has production. But I agree that we're about to see potentially how good Matthew Golden could really be, because like Carter mentioned, yes, Sam Brown is probably Houston's best receiver, but people also knew, okay, well, we just got to watch that guy, right?
Matthew Golden has highest potential.
Yes.
And he came in as the number 1 guy.
Yes.
So maybe Sam Brown benefited from that.
And maybe, somebody like Joseph Manjack benefited from that as well. And so, instead of him benefiting others, right, he's going to be the one where it's everybody's going to be looking at Isaiah Bond. Right, everybody's gonna be looking at, well, we can't let the Bama wide receiver just come in and kill us, because Sark was salivating when he got him too. And it's gonna be Matthew Golden's gonna be on a mismatch or something probably in coverage. And so I'm very fascinated to see Matthew Golden, because Houston, when Dana Holgorsen got let go, everybody in Houston was like, we're probably losing Matthew Golden. We're probably, Texas is just circling the water. Yeah, Texas is just circling the waters, and it's just geez. So, the fact that Matthew Golden's going to be their 3rd option probably, and then guys like Ryan Wingo and Jonte Cook are going to be just waiting in the wings to be 3rd down, their corner's tired. Here, Jonte, go out there and hit him.
When Ewer's coming back, they're going to be scary.
It's going to be scary. So I can see Matthew Golden. I will say, it does shock me that Matthew Golden, I look at his numbers, and it does shock me that he did not have the year that I expect, because of
that's why when Valley brought it up, I love the pick, but also there's still a question.
So he had 400 yards and 6 touchdowns, which again,
it's good.
It's very good. In my mind, I thought he had 800 yards, because of how important he was to Houston.
The offense, yes.
And so I was like, oh man, and I looked, I was like, oh, he only had 4. But again, as a freshman,
I was going to say, he's young.
That's where that expectation comes from him taking the next step forward.
Well, the biggest impact I think he'll make, honestly, is in special teams.
Yes, he is a dynamic
all-conference punt returner. And that was a very underrated part of Xavier Worthy's game.
True.
Was how game-changing he was in the punt return. And then Keelan Robinson at kick returner. I think Matthew Golden takes over for both of those. One thing to watch with this Texas wide receiver room, they don't have a 6'4" Adonai Mitchell anymore.
Sure.
Now, one of my favorite parts of the NFL Combine is where we see how boosted all their measurements are. So Adonai Mitchell is actually 6'2", and he's 6'4" at Texas.
To be honest, nobody was disagreeing with that when they saw him play.
Yes.
The way he's able to attack the jump ball, they're like, oh yeah, that guy's 6'4", right?
Exactly, but Texas now, all these transfers, Silas Bolden is 5'7".
Yeah.
Matthew Golden's 6 foot on Texas's roster, so probably 5'10".
Right.
Isaiah Bond's 5'11".
Yeah.
They're all very good, but is there that deep threat out there? Maybe it's Ryan Wingo, but he's also a high schooler right now, basically.
So we'll see. It's something interesting to watch. So again, we may end up doing this exercise in a couple months after the transfer portal.
Another week.
I was about to say. So I was about to say transfer portal opens in a week, which is terrifying. So so that'll do for that segment.